Hello everyone. Today we're going to present the case study, The Experiences of a British Manager in Bahrain. And my name is Emma.
My name is Benjamin.
My name is Carl Milton.
And my name is Carl Michael.
Today I will start by presenting the first part of our report. First, I will give an overview of the case study and explain the purpose of the report. Then I'll describe the background and the setting of the story. And finally, I will introduce the key people involved in the case and describe their roles. And the following sections of the presentation, which my group members will cover, include the expatriate experience and issues, and the recommended adjustments, and an evaluation of those adjustments, followed by a conclusion. So the case study is called The Experience of a British Manager in Bahrain, and it focuses on Sharon Round Akhtar, who is a British woman who recently graduated with an MBA in London, and she moved to Bahrain with her husband, Mohammed Isra Akhtar, who is an Indian Muslim. And they chose Bahrain because it was one of the few countries in the Middle East where women could work in management positions. And Sharon was quickly hired by an American financial institution as a project coordinator, and later she also advanced to more senior roles. However, she faced several cultural and social challenges. The purpose of our reports was to analyze Sharon's experience as an expatriate, identify the key cultural factors that influenced her life and her work, and then discuss strategies for successful adaptation. And the report mainly focuses on challenges related to gender inequality, religion, and cultural expectations in the workplace and also in the daily life. And there are several key people in this case study. First, we have Sharon Round Akhtar, the main character. She is British, values equality among nationalities and genders, and although she is interested in Islam, she does not practice it. And then we have her husband, Mohammed Isra Akhtar, who is an Indian Muslim who works as a manager at a bank in Bahrain. He's open-minded and doesn't support religious extremism. And then we have the general manager, who is an European expatriate at Sharon's company. He holds traditional views of gender roles and refused to promote Sharon to a senior management position just because of her gender and the cultural restrictions in Saudi Arabia. And next, Sharon's Arab female colleagues, they looked up to her as a role model since there were no Bahraini women in management positions. They often came to her for advice and help, both at work but also in their personal lives. And her Arab male colleagues respected her professionalism and leadership because she was well educated and she came from a Western background. And finally, the maintenance manager at her housing compound only performed repairs when Sharon said that the request came from her husband and not from herself. Now I'll leave it to Carl, who's going to present about the issues.
Thank you, Emma. So the first issue is regarding gender inequality and denied promotion. And in the case study, Sharon is denied promotion to department manager because of the fact that she is a woman and women are not allowed to travel alone to Saudi Arabia, which then prevents her from getting the role that she wants. And this can also be related to Schwartz theories, where Bahrain is characterized by strong conservative values and tradition, and which stands in contrast to Sharon's British values, which are more defined by autonomy and equality. The second issue is concerning public signs of affection. And here, a situation where Sharon kisses her husband in public leads to outraged reactions from the locals around them. And this is because public demonstration of love is considered inappropriate and disrespectful according to Islamic norms, which is in constant contrast to British norms where it's more normal to be able to show affection in public. The third issue is regarding time management. And in the case study, this is shown by Sharon's frustration over deadlines which are not met and the lack of respect of punctuality, where one of the employees prioritizes religious activities and prayer time over keeping the actual deadlines. And this stands in contrast to British work culture, where time is seen as a resource and is to be used efficiently. This can also be related to Hall's theory, where a high context like Bahrain, social relations, religious routines, and are more prioritized, and time is seen as flexible. Whereas a low context like Great Britain, time is seen as strict and fixed schedules are followed. Fourth issue is regarding work-life balance. Here, Sharon is expected to work overtime to teach her colleagues in computer skills. However, this is not included in her role, which means that she has to work more without getting the equivalent compensation. This can be related to Hofstede's cultural dimensions, where Bahrain is considered more high restraint, which means that work ethic and duty is prioritized, whereas British culture leans more towards indulgence, where you consider personal matters more and try to uphold work-life balance. And this is also a common reason for expatriates experiencing stress, according to Bhaskar Srinivas. And finally, the fifth issue is regarding gender roles in everyday life. This can be seen in two situations in the case study, where the first situation is with a maintenance worker. And when this maintenance worker arrives to do some repairs at Sharon's and her husband's house, she is required to state her husband's name in order for the repairs to even start. In addition, she or the maintenance worker works more efficiently if Sharon states that her husband wants the following to be done. And this shows the limited room for women to maneuver and the male dominance in the everyday life. The second situation is with her female colleagues. And when she mentions that her husband sometimes cooks food at home, she is met with laughter and surprise from her, even from her female colleagues. And this shows how deeply rooted gender norms are, since they can even be upheld by women themselves in the society. Now I will leave it to Benjamin to talk about the recommended adjustments.
All right, thank you very much for that, Carl. So, looking at the first adjustment to be made is the one regarding Sharon's business trips to Saudi Arabia. The recommended adjustment for this case would be to propose to her seniors to bring a male colleague on her business trips to Saudi Arabia. This would mean that Sharon still remains as the actual decision maker in all minds of business, and while still respecting the cultural norms regarding women in Saudi Arabia. To be taken into consideration, though, is this quote from Caliguri and Tang, which states that organizations must balance host countries' cultural expectations with strategic business goals. Moving on to the second issue is the public signs of affection, and to kind of handle this situation is a bit more simple approach. This is a very simple step for the couple to make, and it would be to avoid romantic gestures in public. This is a very small behavioral change that can ensure a much more positive perception from the wider public that they encounter. And I'd also like to share a quote from Fegali here, who states that public displays of affection are considered inappropriate and may be socially stigmatized, hence the recommended adjustment. Moving on to the time management, starting off with another quote from Fegali: time is often perceived more flexibly in Arab cultures, with priority given to social and religious obligations. This then leads into the recommended adjustments for Sharon, which would be to consider praying times or prayer times and religious routines more when she schedules meetings and deadlines and work and so on. These kind of buffer deadlines would be used to maintain productivity at work, but still avoid kind of cultural and religious conflicts. Moving on to the work-life balance issue, the adjustment for this one proposed would be to, instead of working after hours, then it will be to schedule training during the regular working hours. As this study has shown that training embedded in work routines enhances transfer and performance outcomes. So the recommended adjustment is very simple. She submits a formal request to her manager explaining the pros of this adjustment, which would allow her to teach or train her female colleagues during the regular working hours. Very simple, very straightforward adjustment regarding the work-life balance issue. Now looking at the fifth and final issue again, the gender roles in everyday life, and the adjustment that is recommended to handle this. The recommended adjustment would be to use a written authorization from her husband to ensure authority when when confronting or meeting, for example, the maintenance staff or in similar situations. Stated by Trompenas and Hamden Turner, cultural conventions shape the way authority is perceived and negotiated. So it will be a very, moving on from this, it will be a very positive adjustment to her, not only maintenance staff or such, but also their social sphere around them, to clearly communicate their relationship boundaries to, let's say, female colleagues, to avoid these kind of awkward misunderstandings. I will now leave the rest of the presentation to Carl to evaluate these 5 adjustments that I have just presented. Thank you.
So I think the adjustment to bring a male colleague with her, I think is realistic and culturally acceptable, but it does not solve the root problem about gender discrimination. I think it could give her a temporary platform to show her competence, but the risk is that the solution cements permanent need for male assistance. And this is according to an article written by Calgary and Tung in 1999. They conducted the same test with a male colleague and found similar results. So conclusively, I think the feasibility is high, but long-term equality remains unlikely without support from the management. On to the next one. According to an article written by Figali in 1997, avoidance of public actions of love is a really easy and efficient solution that immediately improves one's social adaptability. I think the adjustment is easy to make, although it does come with a personal compromise where Sharon must hide her natural behavior to avoid confrontation. So overall, I think it's a practical solution, but long term it might not be sustainable if she feels like it could hurt or stain the relationship with her husband, Isra. Okay, on to the next one, lack of punctuality and time management. I think the adjustment to add a buffer in accordance with praying times and related holiday is a good and manageable way to minimize cultural confrontations. And this will probably lead to better work relations. One drawback that I found is that she risks appearing inefficient towards her managers or Western colleagues, especially if the deadlines get too flexible. I think overall, I think the solution is practical in her everyday life, but it might create conflicts between local and global job demands. Okay, work balance and overtime. I think the adjustment to schedule training sessions during working hours and making the process more formal is illogical and fair, but it depends on that the manager accepts the change. So overall, I think the advantage is increased efficiency and less stress for Sharon. The downside is that she needs organizational support, which she does not fully control. I also really like this take from Takeuchi in an article from 2010, where he says, expected adjustment is affected by multiple stakeholders like family and organization, which means that individual strategies have their limits. Okay, on to the last adjustment about gender roles in her everyday life. I think the adjustments with a written authorization from her husband solves the practical problem with the maintenance worker. But the problem becomes that rather than challenging it, I think she accepts the practical system. Overall, I think the strategy is easy to do and it reduces friction. But long term, it could be seen as a bit humiliating and could contribute to internal conflicts. On the other hand, I think the discussion with her female colleagues is really positive. But she needs to be a bit careful with how she presents it. I think a direct approach could be seen as a bit arrogant, and silence risks conforming their assumptions. Okay, to conclude, we think that Sharon's experiences in Bahrain highlight the balance between her respecting herself and cultural adjustments. The proposed adjustments are pragmatic and effective in the short term, but in the long term, there will be tensions between professionalism, success, and self-respect. That was our presentation. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.